For decades, humanity had trusted the Galactic Concord. It was a council made up of 7 alien species that kept peace across a large part of space. Earth had joined this group not as a ruler, but as a student, eager to learn, to trade, and to prove it belonged among the stars. The humans had no empire, no ancient war machines, no secret weapons. All they had was hope, hard work, and a stubborn will to survive. Ethan Cole was one of Earth's top diplomats. He wasn't flashy or loud. He spoke softly, listened carefully, and always carried a small notebook filled with observations about alien customs, trade terms, and quiet warnings from his gut. He had spent 15 years aboard space stations, orbiting moons and inside alien vessels, trying to build trust between humans and the Concord. Most of the time it felt like progress. Ships from Earth carried grain, medicine, and art to distant worlds. In return, humans received energy cells, navigation tech, and access to safe jump lanes. It wasn't perfect, but it was peaceful. The Varelians were the leaders of the Concord, tall, silver-skinned, with eyes like polished obsidian. They spoke in calm, measured tones that made every sentence sound like wisdom. They had welcomed humanity at first, praising human creativity and resilience. But over time, their praise grew quieter. Their meetings grew shorter. Their eyes lingered a little too long on human ship designs, on reports of new colonies, on the speed at which Earth's fleet grew, not in weapons, but in numbers. Ethan noticed the shift before anyone else. He saw how Varelian delegates would exchange glances when a human scientist presented a breakthrough. He heard the subtle pauses in conversations when Earth's name was mentioned. He didn't have proof, only unease. And in diplomacy, unease was often the first sign of danger. One evening, aboard the Concord's central hub, a massive ring-shaped station orbiting a quiet star, Ethan was granted access to a routine data archive. It was part of a goodwill gesture. Allow human delegates to review old trade logs to improve future negotiations. The files were supposed to be harmless, but as Ethan scrolled through layers of encrypted logs, a glitch in the system revealed a hidden subfolder. It wasn't labeled. It just sat there, buried under layers of code. Curious, he ran a decryption sequence he'd learned from an old friend in Earth's cyber intel division. The file opened. What he saw made his hands go cold. It was a plan, not a rumor, not a draft. A finalized operation called Project Cleansing Veil. The document listed every human world, Earth, Mars colonies, Titan outposts, even the research stations near Proxima. Next to each name was a date, and next to each date was a single word: isolate. The details were chilling. The Concord would collapse all jump gates connected to human space. They would deploy orbital suppressors, devices that blocked energy signals and disabled ship engines, around Earth and its colonies. No comms, no escape, no reinforcements. The humans would be cut off, left to rot while the rest of the galaxy pretended they never existed. Worse, the document claimed humanity had become unstable, unpredictable, and a threat to galactic harmony. It was a lie wrapped in official language, signed by all 7 conquered species, including the Varelians at the top. Ethan's heart pounded. He copied the file onto a secure chip, his fingers trembling. He knew he had minutes, maybe seconds, before the system flagged the breach. He slipped the chip into his sleeve and walked calmly out of the archive, nodding to the Varelian guard as if nothing had happened. Back in his quarters, he tried to send an emergency burst transmission to Earth Command, but the moment he activated his private comms, alarms blared outside his door. Red lights flashed. The station's AI announced a containment protocol in smooth, emotionless tones. They knew. He grabbed his emergency pack, smashed the comms unit to erase traces, and bolted for the maintenance tunnels. He'd studied the station's blueprints for years. He knew every vent, every service hatch, every blind spot in the security grid. He ran through narrow corridors, his breath ragged, his mind racing. He had to get off this station. He had to warn Earth. He reached Docking Bay 7, where his small diplomatic shuttle, the Kestrel, was parked. But as he sprinted toward it, 3 Varelian enforcers appeared from the shadows, their stun batons humming. Ethan didn't stop. He dove behind a cargo crate, pulled a flare from his pack, and hurled it down the corridor. The bright light blinded the enforcers for just a second, long enough for him to sprint to the Kestrel and slam the hatch shut. Alarms wailed as the shuttle's engines roared to life. He bypassed safety checks, ignored docking protocols, and shot out of the bay like a bullet. Behind him, fighter drones launched from the station, their weapons charging. Ethan flew blind, weaving through asteroid debris near the Helios relay. He knew he couldn't outrun them forever. His only chance was to send the warning before they destroyed him. He patched together a short-range burst transmission, unencrypted, raw, desperate, and aimed it toward the nearest human listening post near Neptune. "Council compromised," he gasped into the mic, his voice shaking. "Veil descending. Flee." The words were barely out when a plasma bolt struck the Kestrel's rear thrusters. The ship shuddered violently. Lights flickered. Oxygen alarms blared. Ethan lost control. The last thing he saw before the cockpit went dark was the cold, endless black of space, and the distant glimmer of a human outpost, hopefully still listening. He didn't know if the message got through. He didn't know if anyone would believe it, but he had done what he could. The betrayal was real, and if humanity had any chance left, it would have to run. The message arrived at the Luna Deep Space Monitoring Array like a whisper in a storm. It was short, broken, and carried the digital scars of a dying transmission. But Lieutenant Maya Briggs knew that voice. She had trained with Ethan Cole during her early days in the comms division. She recognized his encryption rhythm, the slight pause before his call sign, the way he always ended urgent alerts with a single word: flee. Maya sat alone in the dim glow of her console, surrounded by silent screens and humming servers. Outside the observation window, Earth hung in the blackness like a blue jewel, calm, unaware. She replayed the message 3 times, her fingers tight around her coffee mug. Something was wrong. Very wrong. She flagged the transmission as Priority Alpha and sent it straight to Earth Command. Within minutes, a response came back. Likely Varelian spoof. No Concord activity detected. Stand by. Maya frowned. She didn't buy it. Spoofing Ethan's personal encryption would take more than just skill. It would take inside access. And why would the Varelians fake a warning about themselves? It made no sense. She pulled up recent Concord fleet logs. On the surface, everything looked normal. Patrol routes unchanged, trade convoys on schedule, diplomatic shuttles moving between stations. But Maya had spent years watching data patterns. She saw what others missed. Over the past 2 weeks, Varelian supply ships had rerouted through the outer Sol system, places they never visited before. Energy signatures near Neptune's orbit spiked at odd hours, and 3 civilian jump gates had gone offline for maintenance with no estimated return date. She compiled the anomalies into a report, added Ethan's message at the top, and sent it again. This time, she copied in Captain Derek Lang of the frigate Odyssey, an old friend who'd once pulled her out of a comms blackout during the Titan drills. Derek wasn't high command, but he was smart, trusted, and still close enough to the front lines to act fast. Hours passed. No reply from Earth Command, but Derek answered within minutes. "Meet me at Dock 9 Luna Station. Bring your data chip. And don't tell anyone." Maya hesitated. Going off record was a career-ending move. But if Ethan was right, careers wouldn't matter soon. She copied her files onto a shielded chip, erased her local logs, and walked calmly to the docking bay. Derek was waiting in the shadow of the Odyssey, a worn leather jacket over his uniform, his face grim. He'd aged since Titan, more lines around his eyes, less patience for nonsense. He listened without interrupting as Maya explained everything. When she finished, he stared at the chip in her hand like it was a live grenade. "You know what you're asking," he said quietly. "If we're wrong, we're traitors. If we're right, we might be the only ones who can save anyone." "I know," Maya said, "but someone has to try." They spent the next 12 hours inside the Odyssey's war room, cross-referencing Maya's data with Derek's own fleet intel. They found more signs. Concord ships were gathering near the edge of human space, not in attack formation, but in a loose ring, like they were setting a trap. Worse, Earth's long-range sensors had been quietly downgraded over the past month under the guise of system updates. Someone had made sure humanity wouldn't see the veil coming. Derek made a decision. "We can't wait for orders. We broadcast the truth." Using the Odyssey's emergency override, they patched into every open channel, civilian, military, even private comms networks. Maya wrote a simple message. "Warning from Ethan Cole. Concord plans to isolate Earth. Jump gates will fail. Orbital suppressors incoming. Flee while you can." She attached Ethan's original audio, raw and desperate. Derek authorized the broadcast. The signal went out in a wide pulse, bouncing off satellites, relay stations, and even old mining drones. Within minutes, replies flooded in. Some called it a hoax. Others panicked. A few freighter captains asked for coordinates. One colony ship near Mars powered up its engines without waiting for confirmation. Back on Earth, General Paul Dawson summoned Maya via secure link. His face was red with anger. "You've caused mass hysteria," he snapped. "Do you have any idea what this could do to morale, to trade? The Concord has already filed a formal complaint." "They're lying," Maya said, her voice steady. "Check the jump gate at Proxima. It's offline. Not broken, shut down remotely." "That's not maintenance. That's preparation." Dawson paused. For a second, doubt flickered in his eyes. But then he shook his head. "Until I have proof from official channels, I can't act. Stand down, Lieutenant, or you'll be court-martialed." The call ended. Maya looked at Derek. He just nodded. "They won't believe it until it's too late," he said. "But maybe not everyone needs orders to survive." Over the next day, something strange happened. Ships began to move. Not military vessels, those stayed put, waiting for commands. But civilian haulers, research tugs, even luxury yachts started leaving port. Families packed emergency kits. Engineers rerouted power to backup thrusters. Kids were pulled from schools and sent to orbital shelters, just in case. Maya and Derek watched from the Odyssey's bridge as the first wave of ships lifted off from Luna's surface. No fanfare, no announcements. Just quiet, determined escapes. Then the comms lit up again. A faint signal, weak, distorted, but unmistakable. It was Ethan. His escape pod had survived. He was drifting near Neptune, low on power, but alive. He confirmed everything. The veil wasn't coming. It was already falling. "They think we'll beg," Ethan whispered through static. "They think we'll accept quarantine like obedient pets. But we're not pets. We're people, and people run when the house is on fire." Derek turned to Maya. "We can't save everyone, but we can give them a chance." They updated the broadcast with Ethan's new coordinates and a list of safe jump points, old routes used by smugglers and explorers, ignored by the Concord. They warned about suppressor ranges, patrol patterns, and blind spots in the blockade. It wasn't a plan. It was a lifeline. As the Odyssey prepared to leave lunar orbit, Maya looked one last time at Earth. Cities glittered below, unaware of the trap closing around them. She hoped someone was listening. She hoped it was enough, because soon the sky would go dark, and the only voices left would be the ones brave enough to flee. The attack came without warning. One moment, Earth's skies were clear. The next, the stars blinked out. Orbital suppressors dropped from hidden Concorde carriers like silent seeds. They unfolded in geosynchronous orbit, humming with dark energy that choked every signal. Radio, laser, quantum comms, even emergency beacons. Satellites went dead. Power grids flickered. Cities plunged into confusion as screens went black and navigation systems failed. Planes circling airports lost contact. Ships in dry dock couldn't start their engines. It was as if the planet had been wrapped in a thick, invisible blanket. At the same time, jump gates across human space collapsed. Not from damage, but by design. The Concorde had embedded kill codes deep in the gate networks during routine maintenance visits. With a single command, the shimmering rings of light that connected Earth to Mars, to Titan, to Proxima Centauri, snapped shut like closing eyes. Explosions rippled through the void as unstable wormholes imploded, taking nearby ships with them. Debris floated in silence. Panic spread faster than fire. In New Delhi, crowds flooded the streets shouting at blank phones. In Rio, hospitals lost backup power. In Chicago, families huddled in basements, listening to the eerie quiet of a world cut off from the stars. Earth Command finally believed the warning, but it was too late to fight. Their fleet was blind, grounded, or stranded beyond the now-dead gates, but not everyone was trapped. Thanks to Maya's broadcast and Derek's signal, thousands had already left. Freighters loaded with families drifted near the moon. Mining tugs carried engineers and their children toward the asteroid belt. A luxury liner, the Stardust, packed with refugees, limped toward Jupiter's shadow on backup thrusters. They had no destination, only direction, away. The Odyssey was among them. Derek had pulled the frigate out of lunar orbit just as the first suppressor activated. Now he guided the ship through the chaos, picking up escape pods, guiding lost yachts, and broadcasting updated warnings on low-power channels the Concord couldn't fully jam. Maya sat at the comm station, her eyes red from lack of sleep. She'd been routing signals for hours, connecting survivors, sharing coordinates, calming frightened voices. Every message was a thread in a fragile web of hope. She heard a mother singing to her baby over a crackling line. She heard a teenage boy say he'd never see his dog again. She heard an old miner whisper, "Tell my grandkids I tried." Then Ethan's signal returned, stronger this time. His pod had been found by a scavenger ship near Neptune. He was weak but alive, and he had more to say. "They don't just want to trap us," he told them over a secure link. "They want to erase us. Project Cleansing Veil isn't about quarantine. It's about making sure no one remembers we existed. They'll tell the galaxy we turned on ourselves, that we were unstable, dangerous, and no one will question it because we'll be gone." Derek stared at the star map on the bridge. Earth was now a red zone surrounded by Concord patrols. Any ship that tried to return would be destroyed. Any signal from the surface would be blocked. Humanity's home was becoming a tomb, but the exodus had begun. Over the next 48 hours, ships from every corner of human space converged near Pluto. They came from Mars colonies that had launched before the gates fell. They came from research outposts near Saturn. They came from deep-range mining operations that had ignored Earth Command's silence and trusted the warning instead. Old cargo haulers, retired patrol boats, even school trip shuttles, all flying ragged, patched-together formations, low on fuel, high on fear. Derek took command by default. Not because he asked for it, but because he was the only one with a working warship and a clear head. He organized the fleet into clusters based on engine type and fuel levels. Maya coordinated comms, creating a mesh network that bounced signals between ships so no single point could fail. Engineers shared schematics for jury-rigging engines. Doctors listed medical supplies. Teachers started lessons for children over open channels to keep them calm. It wasn't an army. It was a city made of metal and desperation, floating in the cold dark. Then came the first real test. A Varelian scout vessel, sleek and silent, dropped out of warp near the edge of the Kuiper Belt. It scanned the refugee convoy without hailing. Without warning, it fired on a small transport carrying 200 civilians from Titan. The ship broke apart in seconds, its oxygen freezing into glittering clouds. The message was clear: surrender or die. Derek didn't hesitate. He ordered the Odyssey to intercept, using ice chunks from a nearby dwarf planet as cover. The frigate was old, but it had teeth. Its railguns tore through the scout's shields before it could call for backup. The alien ship exploded in a flash of blue flame. Silence followed. Then cheers erupted across the fleet, not loud but steady, like a heartbeat returning. That moment changed everything. Before, they had been running. Now they understood. The Conquered would not let them live, even in exile. There would be no mercy, no negotiations. Only survival. Ethan, now aboard a patched-up freighter called the Wayfarer, sent one final message to the fleet. "They think we're weak because we ask for peace. But peace isn't weakness. Running isn't cowardice. We flee not because we're afraid to fight, but because we choose to live." Derek stood on the bridge of the Odyssey, watching the stars. Earth was behind them now, a fading memory. Ahead lay only unknown space. But they had each other. They had ships. They had a warning that had saved thousands. And they had a choice: hide forever, or find a new home beyond the veil. He turned to Maya. "Plot a course for the Oort cloud," he said. "We're not done yet." The Exodus fleet drifted at the edge of known space, a ragged armada of 12,000 ships clinging to the cold dark beyond Pluto. They had no home, no supply lines, and no guarantee of tomorrow. Food was rationed. Fuel was measured in hours. Oxygen recyclers groaned under the strain of too many breaths. Yet they held together, not by orders but by shared fear and stubborn hope. Derek Lang stood on the bridge of the Odyssey, staring at the star map that now defined their fate. The Oort cloud loomed ahead, a vast shell of ice and rock surrounding the solar system like a ghostly cocoon. Hidden within it was their only chance, an unstable wormhole long dismissed as too dangerous for travel. Ancient human probes had recorded brief windows when the anomaly stabilized, just long enough for a ship to pass through. If they timed it right, the entire fleet might slip through before the Concorde sealed it shut. But timing wasn't the only problem. The wormhole's location was deep in uncharted territory, far from any safe path, and the conquered knew humans were running. Patrols had doubled near the outer rim. Scout ships swept the void with silent sensors, hunting for heat signatures, engine trails, even stray radio waves. Maya Briggs worked tirelessly in the comms bay, her fingers flying over cracked screens. She had linked every ship in the fleet into a single network, what they called the Whisper Net. Messages traveled ship to ship using low-power laser pulses, invisible to long-range scanners. Children sent drawings to strangers on other vessels. Mechanics shared repair tricks. Pilots traded star charts scribbled on napkins. It wasn't just communication, it was community, stitched together in the silence of space. Ethan Cole, now aboard the Wayfarer, spent his days analyzing old probe data. He'd found something others missed. The wormhole didn't open at random. It pulsed in rhythm with a distant pulsar, its gravity tugging at the fabric of space like a drumbeat. If they synced their jump sequence to that pulse, they could ride the wave through. He sent the calculations to Derek. The window would open in 72 hours. It would last only 20 minutes. Panic rippled through the fleet. 20 minutes wasn't enough time for 12,000 ships. Some captains argued they should send only the fastest vessels. The rest would have to stay behind. Others wanted to split up, scatter in all directions, hoping some would escape. Tempers flared over open channels. Fear turned to anger, and anger to despair. Derek called a fleet-wide meeting, not with speeches, but with a simple message. We go together, or we don't go at all. He ordered engineers to modify every ship's jump drive to match the wormhole's frequency. Maya coordinated the updates, sending step-by-step instructions through the Whisper Net. Volunteers worked around the clock, welding parts, rerouting power, testing sequences on broken simulators. A teenage girl from a Mars colony jury rigged a signal booster from scrap metal. An old freighter captain taught others how to balance fuel loads for maximum thrust. Even children helped, sorting parts and passing tools. As the hours ticked down, tension thickened like fog. Then disaster struck. A Varelian destroyer dropped out of warp less than 1,000,000 kilometers from the fleet's position. It hadn't detected them yet, but it was scanning. If it sent a signal, the entire Concorde Armada would descend. Derek made a choice. He ordered the Odyssey to break formation and draw the destroyer away. Buy us time, he told Maya over a private line. Get them ready. The frigate fired its engines and shot toward the edge of the system, broadcasting false heat signatures and engine noise. The Varelian ship took the bait, turning to pursue. For 3 long hours, the Odyssey played cat and mouse through asteroid fields and ice clouds, dodging plasma fire, bleeding fuel, but never stopping. Back with the fleet, Maya took command. She ran final checks, calmed nervous pilots, and repeated Ethan's countdown like a prayer. 10 hours. 9 hours. 8. The Odyssey returned just as the countdown hit 6. Its hull was scorched, one engine dead, but Derek was alive. He limped the ship back into formation without a word. When the pulsar's signal peaked, the wormhole shimmered into existence, a swirling tear in space, glowing faintly violet. It was smaller than expected, unstable, but it was open. Go, Derek said. The first ships entered, small, fast scouts leading the way. Then came freighters, tugs, passenger liners, all flying in tight formation to conserve the wormhole's energy. Maya stayed on the Odyssey's bridge, calling out ship names as they vanished. Stardust, Wayfarer, Iron Mule, Skyward Hope. Each one disappeared into the light, leaving silence behind. Halfway through, alarms blared. The wormhole was collapsing faster than predicted. At this rate, nearly half the fleet would be left behind. Ethan suggested a desperate fix. Overload the jump drives of the last few ships to feed energy back into the anomaly, holding it open a few seconds longer. It was suicide. The ships would be torn apart, but 3 captains volunteered without hesitation. Their sacrifice worked. The wormhole held. The final vessel slipped through just as the edges began to fray. On the other side, the fleet emerged into a quiet spiral arm of the galaxy. No Concorde signals, no patrol routes, no eyes watching. Stars burned steady and calm. Planets circled in peace. It was empty, untouched, free. Derek looked at Maya. She was crying but smiling. They had made it. Not all of them, But enough. They had lost Earth. They had lost friends. They had lost the life they knew. But they had kept their future, and in the silence of a new sky, humanity began again. The fleet drifted in the quiet dark of an unknown arm of the galaxy. No alarms blared. No enemy ships chased them. No signals from Earth broke the silence. For the first time in months, there was only stillness. The wormhole had sealed behind them, leaving no trail, no way back. They were alone, but safe. Derek Lang stood on the observation deck of the Odyssey, watching a blue-green planet turn slowly below. It had no name yet, no cities, no wars, just oceans, forests, and clean air. Scans showed it was habitable, warm enough, wet enough, rich with life that had never seen a human face. Maya Briggs called it Haven. The name spread through the fleet like a sigh of relief. They didn't land all at once. They couldn't. Many ships were damaged, low on power, or carrying people too weak to move. But over the next few weeks, shuttles ferried survivors down in waves. Engineers built landing pads from scrap metal. Doctors set up clinics under canvas tents. Children ran through fields of tall grass, laughing at the strange birds that sang in the trees. It wasn't Earth, but it was home now. Maya worked from a makeshift command center inside a hollowed-out cargo container. She coordinated food distribution, mapped freshwater sources, and linked solar collectors to power the growing camp. She still wore her old comms headset, though there was no one to call beyond the fleet. Sometimes she'd turn it on just to hear the static, proof that silence could be peaceful, not terrifying. Ethan Cole walked among the settlers, not as a diplomat anymore, but as a teacher. He helped rebuild what they'd lost, not with treaties or tech, but with stories. He told children about Earth's oceans, its mountains, its music. He reminded adults why they ran, not just to escape death, but to protect the idea of tomorrow. He never spoke of revenge, only remembrance. Derek stayed aboard the Odyssey, which now orbited Haven like a silent guardian. He oversaw repairs, trained new pilots, and kept watch on the stars. He knew the Concorde might one day find this place. The galaxy was vast, but not infinite, so he prepared not for war, but for warning. If enemies came, they would not catch humanity sleeping again. Life settled into a new rhythm. Crops were planted in soil tested by old botanists from Mars. Schools opened in repurposed shuttle cabins. A council formed, not like the Galactic Concorde, but made of farmers, mechanics, nurses, and pilots. Everyone had a voice. Decisions were slow, messy, and fair. Months passed. Then a year. The camp grew into a town. The town into a settlement with streets, lights, and a central square, where people gathered every evening to share news, songs, or silence. They built a memorial wall from ship plating, etching the names of those lost during the Exodus, those who stayed behind, those who sacrificed, those who never made it through the wormhole. It wasn't a tomb. It was a promise. We remember. But humanity had not vanished from the galaxy. Far beyond Haven, in systems the conquered thought secure, whispers began to spread. A freighter captain near the Andromeda border claimed he saw a human ship, old, patched, but flying free. A trader on a remote moon swore he bought engine parts stamped with Earth's old insignia. A Varelian patrol reported strange signals near dead jump gates, brief coded bursts that vanished before they could be traced. The Concorde dismissed them as rumors, ghost stories, echoes of a dead species. But the truth was out there. Small groups of humans who hadn't joined the Exodus, those who hid in deep mines, on forgotten stations, or inside derelict ships, had survived. They listened to the silence after the veil fell. They waited, and when they heard the faint signal from Haven, a simple repeating tone, a beacon of hope, they knew they weren't alone. Some began to move quietly, carefully, using old smuggling routes, hidden comms, and the same stubborn will that had saved their kind before. They carried no weapons, only messages, only hope. Back on Haven, Maya stood on a hill at sunset, looking up at the Odyssey glowing in the twilight sky. Derek joined her, his coat worn thin at the elbows. They didn't speak for a long time. They didn't need to. They had lost everything. But they had kept each other. The Council had betrayed them. The galaxy had turned away, but humanity had not broken. It had bent, fled, and risen again, not with fire, but with quiet courage. Not as subjects of a throne, but as builders of a future they chose for themselves. And somewhere, in the endless dark between stars, Another human ship was running its engines, setting a course not for war but for home. The warning had been given. The betrayal remembered. Now the story would continue, not in fear but in freedom.